This is the Computer Acceptable Use Policy for the Madison Local School District. The original copy is on the left, and the one that I actually made changes to is on the right. I think that the Madison Local Schools has a pretty good computer acceptable use policy to start off with. I did change a little bit of the language because although they had all the parts involved and they had a lot of examples, I think for most students, especially for the younger students who are in elementary school or junior high, some of the language became a little bit confusing and legalistic, so that it wasn't very friendly and it was a little bit confusing and hard to understand. So although the information is there and it's needed to be there, some of it I just had to tweak a little bit so that it makes it a little bit more student friendly and parent friendly as well. The top page is kind of like the preamble. There are all parts in this computer acceptable use policy. They put a preamble section, they had a statement, acceptable uses, unacceptable uses, and then violations of the policy and consequences. And then at the end of the page they had a student written signed form agreeing to this, basically a contract between themselves and the school with this computer use, and then also one for the parents as well. They did also lack some of the definitions needed to explain some of these more uncommon vocabulary words in computer and internet usage, so I kind of added those in as well. So we'll just kind of go through it. The beginning, they talk about in the preamble about how the Madison Local Schools is really happy to be able to offer this software to students, but at the same time, in order to make sure that its computer network and internet access is available for all students, that it needs to be appropriate and lawful use of this technology. And then it goes on to explain what this user policy is about and how it's going to go through the acceptable uses and the not acceptable uses. So in the first part of this computer acceptable use policy, I didn't really change much of what they had to say. I tried to shorten it just a little bit and include some words that maybe were a little bit more student friendly, especially for junior high teaching 7th graders. I know that a lot of my students would have some trouble with some of these words. So they might sign, but they might not actually understand what they're signing or why it's important that they're aware of this policy. More importantly, I said all students must learn how to safely and effectively utilize this technology and to take responsibility for its use. Especially adding that safely and effectively use this technology was really important to me because they had just taken responsibility for the lawful use of internet and computer district use, but at the same time we've been reading, and I really am a big proponent of just teaching students how to use the internet effectively, how to use the internet safely, so that when they are outside of the district, they are using it in the correct way and keeping themselves safe from harm. I also put in there that the internet may result in the loss of privileges and school disciplinary action or appropriate legal action. On the left-hand side, the Madison Local Schools had said something about, you know, you're going to probably lose it, but I feel like you should put in it may result, just because of the fact that some situations aren't always the same, so you do need to put that in there. Going on to the personal responsibility part, I did change a little bit of this. As you can see there, personal responsibility was about a little short paragraph, just a couple sentences. But I thought that it was really important to stress that as a student, it is your personal responsibility to really understand and use this technology safely. Understand that just because you can break the rules, as I wrote, or bully another student with the computer and not be caught, it doesn't mean that it's still not wrong. It doesn't mean that you're still not going to be caught. It just means at that moment you think you're free. But I explained how the district has electronic footprints that are left behind, so even if we don't catch you in the act, eventually we will catch you. It's your responsibility, once again, to use it appropriately and most importantly safely. And then once again, you can post negative comments, you can sabotage other students' work, or look at inappropriate websites without the knowledge of teachers or administrators. But most importantly, you're going to know you've done something wrong, and so regardless of or not of whether we catch you immediately, you're going to have that guilt with you. You're going to know you were doing something you weren't supposed to, and then to extend that, you're going to know eventually that there will be a time where you will be caught because of the fact that we have these ways to find you out through our school content filtering system and the ability to see where you've been on different websites. The term of the permitted use, that's just basically saying to students, you know, how long this contract is valid for. That I thought they had a pretty good idea of what needed to be said to students, but I'm really all about the contract, so I wanted to make sure that students understood that this is a contract between themselves and the school district, and that they understand that this is, you know, a legal document, and if you don't follow the rules, just like if you don't follow a contract in real life, there will be consequences. And then it says that the computer and network access will last during the course of the school year. And of course, they're going to have to sign a new one if there are any changes and when entering into a new school building like the junior high or the high school. Going on to acceptable uses. I did change a lot of this just to try to clarify it a little bit to make sure that students can understand exactly what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Over on the left-hand side, where Madison has the original copy, it says pretty much that if you have any problems, if you have any doubt about whether you should be using this computer for a certain reason or purpose, to ask somebody designated in the school. But they never list who is designated in the school. So I definitely changed that. I went over to the right-hand side here and I made sure that they said that they are only to be used for educational purposes. I also defined the term educational purpose because they did not on the Madison Local Schools actual AUP right now. So I explained the term educational purpose to add some definitions in there so we are all under the same understanding of each term and word. And then also I said if you have any doubt about whether an activity is educational, consult with a teacher or administrator for guidance. And I thought it was really important to put that in there because if you do have a question, you can ask your teachers. If your teachers don't know the answer, they will ask an administrator. We will find you the right answer. But sometimes when you just say the person designated by the school to help you decide, honestly, I don't think most students would know. Most students might just kind of pass it off then. Unacceptable uses, not only did I change the wording on some of these examples, but also I tried to format it a little bit easier so that students could actually understand what they were reading. So let me scroll up a little bit just so we can focus strictly on the unacceptable uses policy. As you can see over here, the unacceptable uses policy was very confusing, at least for me. They talked about among the uses that are considered unacceptable and which constitute a violation of this policy are the following. Uses that violate the law and encourage others to violate the law, don't transmit offensive or harassing messages, offer for sale or use any substance. And basically it's one long list of things that you cannot do. They don't really explain or define any of the terms that they use, but they use a lot of big words. So on my side, I tried to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So I explained that users must not take part in activities that violate the law, and then I explained some examples, like posting offensive or harassing messages, just like they did. But then at the bottom, I used some bullet points, and I added an A and a B. So not only did I use the same terminology that they did to explain what I had to say or what the students are expected to do, but then I defined for them what plagiarism is, I defined for them what copyright infringement is. So now not only is it shown as an example that these are things unacceptable for use on computers and on the internet while in the school district, but then they understand what plagiarism is, they understand what copyright infringement is. So if they had signed this policy on the left-hand side and later on come to find out they violated one of these policies, they're confronted about it, and then they say, I didn't know what that meant. Now they have the inability to actually use that as an excuse because here it clearly states what plagiarism is, clearly states what copyright infringement is. And I also do that below. I made this a little bit easier. In number 2, they're basically saying that you don't engage in defamation, you don't employ other people's passwords. They use a lot of big words like Trojan horse and time bombs, and it's a little bit confusing. So I tried to make it a little bit more student friendly. So I explained that students are prohibited from using computers on the internet to cause emotional or physical harm to another person. I wanted to make sure that they understood that you cannot use this to harm anyone, not for any purpose at all. Likewise, you cannot use the computer or the internet to damage someone else's property. And then I explained that you cannot bully other students via the internet or computer. You cannot upload a virus or participate in hacking activities. And then underneath, I explained the term harassment, which was used earlier on in number 2. And then I explained the term hacking as Madison did a very good job explaining what you could not do, and they listed a lot of really great examples, but once again, they just didn't really define it and make it clear to the student or the user what these terms were that they were not allowed to be partaking in. Number 3, I didn't really change too much. I just made it a little bit more understandable for the average person. I just said students should never share their password with others. Do not impersonate another user. It's the same thing with number 4. I'm just trying to make these points a little bit clearer, and then also just format the page a little bit differently so it's a little bit easier to understand. They went down and they explained a term called netiquette, and explained that netiquette is basically how to behave on a network. And they had a lot of really good ideas. So basically this was the acceptable use area. Beyond the point of you can be on the computer for websites, educational purposes, anything with your teacher's permission. Now it's basically how to behave while you're on the computer. So the first one was be polite, and they said no swearing, vulgarity, suggestive, obscene, belligerent language. Mine was then, when blogging, emailing, sending private messages, just behave correctly. Do not use computers to make, or redistribute foul jokes, offensive jokes. And then 3 and 4, I kind of like connected. Just make sure that you're doing things appropriately at all times. When sending emails, attachments, you're not forwarding things that you're not supposed to be. Basic internet etiquette. Down here is internet safety, and I did arrange this a little bit differently. I started off with the general warning, individual responsibility of parents, and I think they had a really good start on this, so I just made it, once again, a little bit more clear. And at the bottom, I said immediately report the offense to a teacher or administrator, and I did this because, once again, you're not really saying on the left-hand side who you should tell if you see someone doing something offensive or wrong. So now it's immediately go to a teacher and tell them so that you at least have a record. Hey, I saw this. I told this person. Let's move on. I changed this a little bit to make it a little bit more easy to be understood. And where it says active restriction measures down here on letter E, I now made this a part of my general warning, individual responsibility of parents and users. So I also had up there about how there is content filtering software. Well, now I explain how we monitor things in our school district with data acquisition sites. And so I just thought that flowed a little bit more easily with warning students about what they should be doing when they're using the internet and how we are monitoring them. The second thing was personal safety. Just once again adding in there that if someone does try to meet you outside of the school, notify a teacher, administrator, or parent as soon as possible because they had failed to do that. And then I also deleted this hacking and other illegal activities because it was somewhere else in the document, so I didn't want them to be redundant. And then going down, the privacy, I pretty much left the same because I thought that they had done a really nice job with that. And then the failure to follow the policy, so the consequences, the warranties, that the school district is not responsible basically if something happens, but then also that if something is happening, we will contact the police. We will cooperate fully with any investigation. A little bit about the appearance on a website. They did a really good job with that. Updates, explained where they got some references, what will happen if anything changes. And then down here are the students' agreement, the parent and guardian agreement, and I left that pretty much the same. But basically, I just wanted to make sure that students could understand and really focus on what they were signing, and they didn't have any questions. They couldn't come back and say, I didn't understand this terminology. But for the most part, Madison Local Schools had a really good AUP. I just clarified a few things for them.